What's going on, everybody? Jay Howe here. Patch 2.2.0 has been released, and you're looking for one of the new best builds that's out there. With it comes the new Diablo 3 Demon Hunter set, the Unhallowed Essence, and this is going to make good use out of some skills and really change up your playstyle. I'm going to cover the skills, the gear, the Paragon Points, and all that, and show you what's going to have you tearing down some of the new content in rapid succession. Now this one is a little gear intensive. I'll go over that and some of the alternative options, as well as some links to some other videos as well. For the skills, you're going to be running Elemental Arrow with Ball Lightning, Multi-Shot with Suppression Fire, Smoke Screen with Lingering Fog, Sentry with Polar Station, Preparation with Invigoration, Companion, and this should be the Wolf Companion, and then Call the Weak, Archery, Awareness, and Steady Aim for your passives. Now, Elemental Arrow with Ball Lightning, this will look very familiar. We're going to be using the Meticulous Bolts Quiver again, which some of you may or may not like this. If you don't like this build, I have other builds that you can utilize with the Unhallowed Essence on the channel, but we'll go over those later. The Meticulous Bolts obviously makes this really powerful because Ball Lightning travels at a much slower speed, so having that in place is really good. This is actually going to be your main attack, and I'll cover that because the 6-piece bonus with the Unhallowed Essence set actually creates an illusion that might be something else you'll want to use, but I'll go over that here in just 1 second. Multi-Shot with Suppression Fire. Now, the reason we're using this is not so much for damage, although it is going to do a decent amount at the right times. You're going to see it's going to knock back the first 2 enemies hit. Now, this is actually going to come into play more in your greater rifts, to where you're going to be worried more about survivability than you are in other areas. Now, you can go with something different here if you're looking for more damage, but I recommend sticking with something because, again, your main attack is going to be your Elemental Arrow with Ball Lightning. That's going to be where the most of your damage comes from. You're going to make use of your multi-shot, and I'll go over that in the end with some tips on how you can make this work. Smoke Screen with Lingering Fog. This actually increases the duration to 1.5 seconds to where you are invisible. It has a 1.5 second cooldown. Now, there's a very big change to this that some of you might be looking at. In the yellow text area, this ability does not start its cooldown until after its effects expire. Now, this is a big change before to where it would start cooldown. You'll actually see we'll hit it, and the cooldown doesn't start until it comes back. This, you can no longer have, say, a permanent or mostly permanent smoke screen. If you're not comfortable with that, you can go with something like the traditional vault and tumble, or any other directions there that might get you out of danger. This is going to be one of those things to avoid, not mitigate, but avoid damage, and it's a good use there. Sentry with Polar Station. Now, you might be wondering, why are you running Sentry with Polar Station without the Marauder set? Now, the reason being with this is that it's going to have a nice area there, and you're going to see that actually covers a nice big area. And again, when you're casting Meticulous Bolts, they're moving very slowly. If enemies are running around all over the place, it's going to be harder to hit them. Sentry with Polar Station is going to slow those enemies to give you much more consistent hits. That way they can't necessarily avoid it. Also, proccing there is going to be the Call the Weak passive, which increases damage against slowed or chilled enemies, so you'll get an extra 20% damage increase there. The other part is your Bane of the Trap gem, which hopefully you have leveled. Increase damage against enemies under the effects of control impairing effects. So now you have your Polar Station proccing your Call the Weak and your Bane of the Trap. So you're getting an extra bit of damage. Plus, like I said, you're getting that ever important crowd control with the slowing of them so that you can use your Meticulous Bolts Quiver and your Elemental Arrow much more effectively. So keep that in mind when you're running Sentry with Polar Station. That placement right on top of them or in an area where your enemies are going to be running to helps significantly. Here's another big change. Now, this is something that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Preparation with Invigoration. Now, you don't necessarily need this. You can actually go another direction. But since you're going to be making use out of your multi-shot, this is very important. Permanently increase maximum discipline by 15. And that ties in with the Unhallowed Essence set in the sense that your generators and multi-shot deal 15% increased damage for every point of discipline you have. Having that extra 15 discipline in place times the extra 15% per point means your multi-shot is going to hit that much harder. Very important to note that there. Companion with Wolf Companion, this is just a straight damage increase. You want to proc this or pop this whenever you have the opportunity or at key times that suit your needs, but that extra 30% increased damage for 10 seconds does come in handy. If you're looking for something a little different, if you don't like the Sentry portion or you don't like the Companion portion, you can definitely go with Marked for Death, but I'd probably recommend keeping it like this. For your passives, again, Call the Weak for the ever-important part when you're using Sentry with Polar Station. And you can actually go a couple of different options here. Now, you don't necessarily have to go with Archery. You can actually go, this is just a damage increase. You can go with a number of different directions here. If you want to have more survivability because you're not going to be running Unity, you can go with something like Perfectionist or any other direction to where it's going to benefit your survivability in some form or fashion. And that's just one way to go. Next up, Awareness, because you are always going to need this as a Demon Hunter. This basically is a second life for you every 60 seconds and very important for you. Steady Aim. This is another thing that you have to be able to have the right play style in the sense that in order to keep this up, to get the extra damage increase, you have to make sure and move a lot. And there's a lot of movement involved with this. And this is also where something like the suppression fire is going to come in handy as well to keep enemies away from you and to be able to effectively use that. That's going to be the skills. That's how everything is going to run. Now the very important part is the gear, because this is pretty gear intensive. Like I said, if you're looking for something else, I've got some other builds for you, so feel free to check those out. Kridershot. This is very important. Now I have a pretty terribly rolled Kridershot, and I can still take this into pretty high greater rifts. So hopefully you have something better than this. This rolled almost the worst damage possible. So hopefully you guys have something much better than this. If you have an ancient one, more power to you. This is what makes Elemental Arrow now generates 3 hatred, 3 to 4. That's going to make it free to cast and basically help generate hatred so that you can cast the occasional multi-shot. Your Unhallowed Essence pieces, you need all 6 pieces. Your shoulders, gloves, helm, chest, pants, and boots. Now looking at that, you want to have Elemental Arrow damage rolled on your boots and on your helmet. Most of your damage is going to be coming from Elemental Arrow, so it's very important to have that rolled in the right places. For your chest piece, a very important thing to make note of. Going back to that, let's cover the 6-piece bonus. Your generators also generate 1 discipline. That's the 2-piece bonus. Your 4-piece bonus, gain 20% damage reduction and deal 20% increased damage for 4 seconds if no enemy is within 10 yards of you. That goes hand in hand with also making sure that you have your steady aim. You get the 20% increased damage there, plus you get the 20% increased damage from your 4-piece bonus, plus you're going to take less damage. So it's good to maintain your distance at all times while playing this setup. The 6-piece bonus, your generators and multi-shot deal 15%. We covered this for each point of discipline that you have. One key note, when you're gearing, especially for this set in particular, you'll actually see in the secondary of the chest piece that it can actually roll max discipline. That's an extra 10. You can roll anywhere between 9 and 12. In this one we have 10 max discipline and we're getting 15% extra damage per point. So that's actually going to help quite a bit. Your discipline's going to be boosted up there. It can also roll on your Quiver. Now, we already went over this. The Meticulous Bolts Quiver is very important. It slows down the Elemental Arrow Ball Lightning to make this work. Rolling Elemental Arrow damage on here does help quite a bit. In the secondary, you can roll the extra discipline there, as well as on your bow. They made the change in patch 2.2 with the different bows. Now all of them can roll max discipline. If you can get that there, great. If not, having the Kridershot and Meticulous Bolts, regardless, is what really makes this work. A Thunder Gods is also a nice thing to have to get the extra lightning damage, since, like I said, most of your damage is going to come from Elemental Arrow. So having that in place, if not, a good Witching Hour is a good way to go, and you're not going to miss too much damage there if it's nicely rolled. Next up, this is a very big change in patch 2.2, the Bastion of Will set, which is the Focus and Restraint rings. These now, both of them, when you hit with a resource generating attack or primary skill, the Kridershot makes this a resource generating attack. You get the extra 50% damage for 5 seconds. The other part of that, when you hit with a resource spending attack, deal 50% increased damage for 5 seconds as well. That is, I believe, multiplicative. It's not stacking, but you're going to use that. Now, this is why I said you're occasionally going to use multi-shot. Every 5 seconds, at least, you're going to want to use multi-shot. If you have to use it more often for crowd control, that's great. But you use this every so often, and you'll proc both your Bastions of Will rings there, and that's going to be really nice. Having an amulet that reduces some type of elemental damage, like a Countess Julia's or a Mars Kaleidoscope, something like that would go great for an amulet here, or a really nicely rolled Traveler's Pledge. Else, having something in place, now ideally you're going to have lightning damage, crit hit chance, and a socket. If you can't get that, having Dex and both crits and a socket is a nice way to go. Bane of the Powerful Gem, nice way to top that off. Now for your third gem, if you did have a third socket there, you can go quite a few number of directions. I'm going to leave that up to you. Going more defensive to where you mitigate damage or help life regen. The Molten Wildebeest is a good option, or some of the new defensive gems there. That's going to be a nice setup. For your Paragon Points, maxing your movement speed in conjunction with your gear is going to be very important, because movement speed is ever so important. Dexterity after that. Offense. Now this is something that may or may not suit you if you don't have a lot of Paragon Points. It's going to be pretty much cooldown reduction, in the sense that you want to get that smoke screen. Every fraction of a second is going to count there. Crit hit damage, very important as well. Now I actually have really high crit hit chance at 55%, so I elected to go with attack speed. Being able to get off more Meticulous Bolts is okay there for me. If you don't have high crit hit chance, obviously maintain it there. Resist all armor, life, and then life regen, very important. And we were just farming on here. Life on hit. You don't necessarily need to worry about resource cost reduction, so it's life on hit, area damage, then resource cost reduction in case you need to use those multi-shots. Then if you have enough, the gold find, which won't really matter in Greater Rifts too much. That's the build. So if you guys like this build, this is going to be carrying you into really high Greater Rifts if you play this properly. And obviously if you have a better Kridershot than I do, you're going to be able to find that you're going to do incredible damage. So keep that in mind while you're playing that. If you like the build and you like what this is going to do for you, feel free to hit that like button. That is always appreciated. I'll show you real briefly how this works when I was talking about keeping both of them procced. This is way overpowered for Torment 6. And to be honest with you, if you do plan on running Torment 6, I would not use this as a farming build, because it's just going to be way too slow. And you're going to see as the Meticulous Bolts hit, we're getting 100+ million crits because we had both our Focus and our Restraint procced. So you can get this in here, you'll see that one's procced and then we hit with the other, and now we have both procced. And so long as you attack within 5 seconds every time, you'll keep both of those up and get that extra damage, which is ever so important to this build. Be on the lookout for more build videos for all classes. I'm going to be doing all classes for patch 2.2. So if you haven't subscribed already and you're looking for build videos and you want to know what to use, be sure and subscribe and do that and be a part of the group now. Like I said, if you like the build, if you like the video, feel free to hit that like button, because that is always greatly appreciated. Till next time, I appreciate you guys watching. As always, happy hunting. See you again.